We are here with Dennis Muilenberg, who is the chairman and CEO of Boeing. And I know you didn't hear what Scott was saying, but he was just running through the markets and what's been happening today. Right now, it looks like the Dow's down by about 440 points, but we were off 700 points or even more, and Boeing was one of the big laggards of the day. It was down by about 6% because there are so many concerns about China and trade. China is obviously very important to you, but what's your take on what's happening with the trade talks with China right now?
Well, Becky, I think what you see is some local volatility again in the market because of some trade uncertainty. And we're hopeful coming out of the G20 summit that we're on a path to finding a trade agreement with China that's going to be productive for both the U.S. and China. It's a really important marketplace for us. If you think about aerospace, it's an $8.1 trillion marketplace over the next 10 years. The world needs about 43,000 new commercial airplanes over the next 20 years, and about 7,700 of those are in China. It's the fastest growing market, so very important to us.
It's very important just from your bottom line, too. I think something like a quarter of all your airplane deliveries go to China right now?
About a quarter of our airplane deliveries, and as China grows, it's allowing us to grow in the U.S. as well. You know, the great thing about our aerospace industry model is we're a big exporter. So we're the sector that creates the biggest trade surplus for the U.S., about an $80 to $90 billion a year trade surplus. We export about 80% of the commercial airplanes that we build, and about 90% of the jobs associated with that are in the U.S. So it's a great manufacturing jobs generator in the U.S., while we also help countries like China grow their economy as they grow their aerospace capability.
Obviously, people initially thought coming out of the G20 that things were going well. The president tweeted out some things that sounded very optimistic. The market's been a little less convinced this week as they just think through how complicated these trade talks are, how many moving pieces there are, and the idea that you could come to some resolution in 90 days seems a little hard to get your head around. What have you heard? What are you watching? What are the things that kind of signal to you whether things are going well or not?
Yeah. Well, I'm encouraged by the dialogue that we've heard, and I think both President Trump and President Xi are motivated to find a solution. I think they've had a productive conversation. I've had the opportunity over the last couple of days to talk with Secretary Mnuchin and Larry Kudlow as well, and I think they've both indicated a positive outcome is ahead of us. There's still some hard work to do on topics like intellectual property and technology transfer, but I think both countries are motivated to find a solution. I can tell you from an aerospace standpoint, both countries are motivated to have a healthy aerospace ecosystem. China needs the capability, the aerospace lift, to help grow their economy. We have about 150 million new passengers in China every year, so they need the airplanes. And again, here in the U.S., that's U.S. manufacturing jobs. So both countries are motivated to find a solution here. I know there's a lot of hard work to go, but I think the tone coming out of the G20 summit is positive, and I think both sides are highly motivated to find a solution. We're certainly very engaged with governments in both countries, and we're going to do what we can to assist and help reach a positive conclusion.
Is this something, if we don't reach some sort of an amicable solution, is it something that's going to directly affect you? Have you heard from the Chinese leadership that they would not buy as many planes, that they would not take deliveries, that there would be tariffs slapped on things that are coming in there, and maybe that would weaken the demand?
Well, it's certainly something we're keeping a close eye on. I think it's also important that we maintain the long view. You know, this aerospace industry is a decades-long view. Today, we have backlog of about 5,800 commercial airplanes. That's the equivalent of roughly 7 years of production. So while we're very important to us to resolve these tactical trade matters and these near-term issues, we also have to keep the long-term view on our production planning. And the fact that we have these healthy backlogs, that they're globally diverse, allows us to continue to invest and ramp up. So we do need to find these trade solutions, but at the same time we need to maintain this long-term view and continue to invest in innovation for the future.
Part of what you're doing is opening a finishing plant in China.
Yeah.
Those planes will still be manufactured in the United States, but I guess seats and different interiors will be put together in China. Is that still on track to open later this month?
Yeah, we're opening a new 737 finishing center here by the end of the year. This is an important capability for us in China, and what we'll be doing is flying airplanes off of our production line here in the U.S., flying them to China, and then doing things like seat installation and paint and other unique capabilities for Chinese customers to deliver those airplanes. This is a great example of a win-win investment. So we're growing capacity in China. This is also part of what's enabling us to ramp up the 737 production line here in the U.S. You know, this year we've ramped up to 52 a month. Next year we're going to 57 a month. And we're going to produce a total of more than 800 commercial airplanes this year, a new record. Before the end of the decade, we're going to be producing more than 900 airplanes a year. So you can see the growth that's being fueled largely by our growth in China. And there is space here for win-win solutions.
Dennis, I know you think on the long term, but when you see this kind of market volatility on the short term, how do you look at it? Does it affect any of the planning that you're doing? Does it affect CEO confidence from the airlines that you deal with? How do you kind of measure all of it?
Not really. You know, again, we pay close attention to it, and market volatility, I think, again, reflects uncertainty, especially around trade at the moment. But this long-term business mindset is important to us. You know, we invest for the future. The great benefits that we've recently received from tax reform here in the U.S. are allowing us to further invest in innovation. We're investing more in R&D and capital today than we ever have. We're growing for the future. And this aerospace market's going to continue to grow. Passenger traffic around the world is growing at 6 to 7% a year. That's a long-term sustained trend. That's what's going to allow us to fuel the future. So we pay attention to this local volatility, but the long-term planning, long-term innovation investment is what makes this business work.
I want to talk to you about Lion Air. There was an article in the Wall Street Journal yesterday that laid out kind of how things have gone through and raised some interesting questions. It brought up this idea that Boeing's long tradition of favoring putting pilots in control over automation could be at risk because of what happened in this latest go-round. The accusation that they've made is that you weren't clear enough with the pilots. We've heard from the head of a pilots union who loves the plane, says he feels very safe in it, but also says you didn't give them all the information that he thinks they should have needed. What do you say to that?
Yeah. Well, first of all, I think it's important, again, that we express our sympathies and condolences for the families that are affected by this incident. We know our airplanes are safe, but at the same time, anytime something like this happens, it has our empathy. Now, we're in constant communication with our customers. We're very confident that we're providing the information that they need. We've been out engaging with all of our customers again on the backside of this incident. We know that the incident here, the situation is handled by existing procedures in the airplanes. We've reinforced that with a bulletin that we've put out, which was further reinforced by the FAA directing pilots and airlines to these existing procedures. But we are taking a look at that to make sure all of the appropriate training is in place and that the communications with our customers are there. It's very, very important to us. But I will say, bottom line here, very important, is that the 737 MAX is safe. We're very confident in that. We have not changed our design philosophy. These are airplanes that are handled well in the control of the pilots. They're designed the same way our previous 737s are. Take advantage of those systems. And the proof of that is you look around the world today, all of our customers are flying all of their MAXs daily around the world. The airplane is safe, and we're very confident in that.
The Journal suggests, though, that there wasn't more prevalence placed on this because you are very interested in making sure that training is kept to a minimum so that it doesn't put more burden on the airlines. Is that a fair assessment?
Yeah, it's important as we transition from the 737 next gen, the NG, to the MAX. Part of what we wanted to accomplish was seamless training and introduction for our customers. So we purposely designed the airplane to behave in the same way. So even though it's a different airplane design, the control laws that fly the airplane are designed to make the airplane behave the same way in the hands of the pilot.
But the accusation in the newspaper article and other places I've heard was that it didn't. It was a little more of a downward pull and not as easy to manipulate by pulling back up on the rudder, on the steering.
Well, and that's, again, why it's important to use the procedure that's actually been approved for that kind of situation. That's
Which is to shut it
what
off?
We call a runaway stabilizer procedure. The approach for handling that is to hit the cutoff switches, the same exact procedure in the NG as it is in the MAX. And that's what's called out in the existing procedure, which is why we've pointed back to that with the bulletin that we recently issued.
The co-founder of Lion Air said that they are considering canceling some of the future shipments that were due. They're your third largest customer when it comes to the 737 MAX. Is that a realistic threat? And is that a problem if they do?
Well, first of all, Lion Air is a very respected customer of ours, and we care about our customers. And this is a tough situation, and understandable that there are some challenges around that. But this is a highly respected customer. We're in constant communication with Lion Air. We're going to work our way through this. Of course, all of these contracts are long-term arrangements. These are not things that can be exclusively canceled by either side. And again, you got to put it in the context of this long-term backlog. The 737 production line is a very healthy production line. We have a lot of reasons to ramp up, and the demand for that airplane around the world is very high. And even though we're ramping to 52, 57 a month, we're oversold against that profile.